A few months ago, I talked to someone who had made 4 different budgets in the same year. 4 in 12 months. And every single one started exactly the same way. Full of motivation, color-coded spreadsheets, neat little categories for everything, groceries, entertainment, savings. She even had a separate category just for coffee. It looked beautiful. It looked like the kind of thing that would finally fix everything. And every single one ended the same way too. Somewhere around week 3, she just stopped opening the spreadsheet. Not because she failed on purpose, not because she didn't care. She just quietly stopped. The file sat there in a folder, slowly forgotten, until a few weeks later she felt guilty enough to start a brand new one. And the cycle began again. If you've ever made a budget and abandoned it, I want you to know something right now. You're not bad with money. You're not lazy. You're not the only one. In fact, most people who make a budget never actually stick to it past the first month. And today, we're going to talk about why that really happens. Because once you understand the real reason, budgeting stops feeling like a punishment and starts feeling like something you can actually live with. I'll be honest with you. I used to think people who failed at budgeting just lacked willpower. I genuinely believed that if you really wanted it, you'd just track every dollar and stick to the plan. Then I tried it myself, properly. And I fell apart in about 2 weeks, doing the exact same things I used to quietly judge other people for. That's when it hit me. The problem was never the person. The problem was the way budgets are built. Here's where most budgets go wrong from the very beginning. They're built like a diet. Think about that for a second. A budget usually starts with restriction. No eating out, no random purchases, no small treats, just discipline, discipline, discipline. And just like a diet, it works for a little while. You feel proud, you feel in control, you feel like this time is different. Then real life shows up. A friend invites you out, your car needs a repair. You're tired after a long week, and you just want to order food instead of cooking for the 5th night in a row. And here's the moment that decides everything. You break one rule in your budget, just one small thing, a $12 meal. And instead of shrugging and moving on, something in your brain flips a switch. You start telling yourself the budget is already ruined for the month. So what's the point of continuing? That one skipped rule turns into a skipped week, which turns into a forgotten spreadsheet sitting in a folder somewhere, untouched. This is called the what the hell effect. And it's the exact same thing that happens with diets. One cookie turns into the whole box because your brain treats the plan as all or nothing. You were perfect, and now you're not, so you might as well give up entirely. There's no room in that system for being human, and humans are never perfect for 30 days straight. Nobody is. Let's talk about something else that quietly destroys budgets. Most people build their budget around who they want to be, not who they actually are. You sit down, feeling motivated, and you write down these ambitious numbers. $50 for groceries a week, $20 for entertainment, almost nothing for random spending. It looks great on paper, it feels responsible, it feels like the budget of a person who has their life together. But here's the problem. That version of you, the one who never grabs a coffee out of impulse, who never says yes to a spontaneous dinner, who never buys something just because it was a hard day, that version doesn't actually exist. You built a budget for an imaginary person instead of the real one sitting there making it. And you handed that imaginary person a life with zero room for joy. And when your real spending doesn't match your imaginary plan, you don't think, maybe my numbers were just unrealistic. You think, I failed. You make it about your character instead of your math. Which brings us to the next reason budgets quietly fall apart. Budgets fail because we treat small mismatches as personal failures instead of useful information. Let's say you planned for $200 in groceries and you spent $230. Realistically, that's a $30 difference. It's not a disaster. It's just information you can use to adjust next month. Maybe 200 was never a realistic number for the way you actually eat. That's not failure. That's data. But most people don't see it that way. They see that $30 as proof. Proof that they can't do this. Proof that they're bad with money. Proof that the whole system is pointless. And here's something I've noticed over and over. The people who succeed with money long-term rarely have perfect months. What they have is the ability to look at a messy month and calmly adjust, instead of quitting entirely. They see numbers. Everyone else sees judgment. I remember someone telling me about their first year of tracking money. They went over budget in 9 months out of 12. 9. On paper, that sounds like a complete failure. But because they never quit and just kept adjusting, they still ended that year with more saved than they'd ever managed before. The imperfect plan they stuck with beat every perfect plan they'd ever abandoned. Now let's talk about something that surprises a lot of people. Budgets often fail simply because they're too detailed to survive real life. Imagine trying to track 15 different categories every single day: groceries, snacks, gas, parking, subscriptions, gifts, random purchases. Each one needs its own number, its own tracking, its own little decision. That sounds organized, it sounds responsible, but it's actually exhausting, and exhausting systems don't last. Not because you're incapable of discipline, but because your brain has a very limited amount of patience for micromanaging every single dollar you touch. Think about it like trying to control every single muscle movement while you walk. If you consciously thought about every step, every shift of weight, every bend of the knee, you'd trip constantly. Walking works because most of it happens automatically, in the background. Your money needs to work the same way. The simpler the system, the less it depends on your daily willpower, and the longer it survives. Complexity feels smart in the moment, but simplicity is what actually lasts. So if budgets built on restriction, unrealistic expectations, and constant tracking usually fail, what actually works? Honestly, the answer isn't nearly as exciting as a perfect color-coded spreadsheet. It's flexibility. The budgets that actually last aren't rigid. They have room to breathe. Instead of 15 categories, they have 3 or 4 broad ones: needs, wants, savings. That's it. Instead of assuming you'll never make an impulse purchase again for the rest of your life, they plan for one. A small amount set aside specifically for spontaneous spending. So when it happens, and it will happen, it's already accounted for, instead of feeling like a personal failure. You didn't break the budget. The budget expected you. And instead of treating one bad week as the end of the entire plan, flexible budgets treat it as one data point out of 52 in a year. One rough week doesn't erase the other 51. Think about that ratio for a second. Would you throw away an entire year because of a single hard week? Of course not. But that's exactly what the all-or-nothing budget quietly asks you to do. There's a phrase I think about a lot when it comes to money. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a plan that can survive an imperfect week. Read that one more time in your head, because that single idea is the difference between the people who are still budgeting a year from now and the people who deleted the file in week 3. If you've tried budgeting before and gave up, I really don't want you to walk away seeing that as evidence that you're bad with money. I want you to see it as evidence that the method simply didn't fit a real human life, because a budget was never supposed to be a test you pass or fail. It's supposed to be a tool that adjusts with you, bends with you, and forgives you when a week goes sideways. So here's what I'd want you to remember. Stop building a budget for the person you wish you were. Build one for the person you actually are, mistakes and impulses and hard days included. Leave room for a bad week. Leave room for one unplanned purchase. Leave room, honestly, for being a human being. Because the goal was never perfection. It never should have been. The goal is a system simple enough and forgiving enough that you're still quietly using it a year from now, not the version you built with so much hope and then deleted in week 3.